So welcome to Success in Intro to Psych Part 2. So this is Chapter 1, Part 2. We're going to start this talking about some of the things that are discussed on the OpenPsych website in the first module, which I call the first chapter. We're not going to cover all of everything that's in that first chapter, but some of the important things. Now to start this though, I need to ask you a general question, and the question is, are you smart? Now, I know that's not a fair question, and I apologize for making you answer it. I hope you think you're smart, and I think that's great. But we need to talk about what are the things that contribute to the idea of whether or not you consider yourself to be smart or not smart. And with that in mind, we need to talk about some of the aspects that are going to help you be successful, not only in this class, but in other classes as well. So things that we know about psychology that will help you to understand whether or not you can be successful in several different aspects. So when you think about this idea of are you smart or are you not smart, there are certain things that are going to go through your brain, right? Certain things that are going to contribute to that answer to the question. And one thing that we need to talk about has to do with mindset. So Carol Dweck is a rock star in psychology. She does a lot of great work. And one of the main concepts that she talks about is something called mindset. And mindset has to do with you having a mindset about a specific aspect of yourself. So for example, intelligence. You have a mindset as to whether or not you are intelligent. Okay, so are you smart? Well, there's two different mindsets that you can have, and they are either fixed or growth. So when you're talking about a fixed mindset means that you are fixed in whatever that characteristic happens to be. So for example, when we're talking about intelligence, people who have a fixed mindset say, I am fixed in my mindset, I'm fixed in my intelligence. So for example, you say, I am a genius. I'm always going to be a genius. I've always been a genius. I am a genius. And that is a fixed mindset. That concept, intelligence, is fixed. You believe, your mindset is that it's fixed. It will be and always will be the same. Growth, on the other hand, is a different mindset. It says that instead of, I am intelligent, I will always be intelligent, growth mindset says, hey, I can grow in my intelligence. Perhaps I'm not very intelligent now, but I believe that this concept, intelligence, can grow. The mindset is growth. That is, that this concept, intelligence, can grow and become stronger. Now, theoretically, it could go the opposite way for either, right? So somebody could have a fixed mindset, say, oh, I'm not intelligent. I'll never be intelligent. And I'm just always going to be unintelligent. That would be a fixed mindset. You're just fixed with a low intelligence. And growth could also mean that your intelligence could fluctuate, could go up or down. But generally, we talk about it being a growth mindset. So when you think about which one is better for your ability, some people might say, well, hey, if I think that I'm a genius and I'm always going to be a genius, that would be great. I should always think that I'm a genius. Other people think the opposite, and they say, well, if I don't feel intelligent in this one thing, maybe I can grow in my intelligence and become intelligent in something else. Well, we meaning psychology, and specifically Carol Dweck and her colleagues, have done specific scientific analyses on this. That is, they have run experiments to figure this out. And guess what? They have found out that growth is a better mindset, meaning people exhibit more ability and intelligence when they have a growth mindset compared to a fixed mindset of intelligence. Let me kind of go through a couple of things that are important for this class. So first of all, I want you to take a look at this, Blackwell, Krasniewski, and Dweck in 2007. So this is a study. So in psychology, when psychologists, remember, psychology is science, so that means that we do studies. Many of these studies are experiments, like this one. When we refer to an experiment, we tend to refer to those experiments by the last name of the people who are authors on the experiment. So Blackwell, Krasniewski, and Dweck are the last names of the authors of this particular experiment. And the experiment was published in 2007. So in psychology, we rarely talk about the actual title of the experiment. Instead, we talk about the authors and then the year that it was published. And you'll notice that as well, Even though Blackwell is the first in alphabetical order, notice that Trzynski is not next. This is not in an alphabetical order, so it's not meant to be B, D, T. That's not how it goes. Blackwell was the primary author, Trzynski was the secondary author, and Carol Dweck was the last author on this one, right? So that means that Blackwell did the most work, then Trzynski, then Dweck in this particular study that was published in 2007. Now, in this particular study, here's what they did. They were looking at math scores, at the ability to do math in seventh graders. And what they did is that they randomly assigned half of these students to go through a class where they learned about either a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. And what they found is that after the kids had learned to have a growth mindset, they actually performed better on the math test. So here's what's going on. I don't know if you've ever met somebody, maybe in the mirror, who does not like math. It's like, oh, I'm just dumb at math. I can't do it. I can't do math. That is a fixed mindset. And when people have a growth mindset about something like their intelligence in math, we find that they actually are more successful because they're not stopping themselves from being able to do hard or difficult or novel things. If somebody says, oh, I'm just dumb at math and I'll never be good at math, well, it's probably pretty likely that they're going to act that way and they're never going to be able to be as successful as somebody who would say, hey, you know what, maybe right now I'm not as intelligent at math, but I believe that I can grow in my ability to do math. I can grow in my math intelligence. That is a growth mindset. Instead of being fixed, a growth mindset tends to lead to better success. Now, this is not just for math. This is for any topic, psychology, but any other topic that you might be studying or anything that you're trying to grow in. If you think that your ability is fixed, then you're likely to not perform as well as if you believe that you can grow in that ability. Your mindset matters. So now I want to ask a different question. What kind of a learner are you? Now, you've heard about learning styles before, right? Kinesthetic, visual, auditory, etc. I want to know what kind of learner you are. All right, so when you answered this question, I want to let you know that I don't care. I don't care what you said. I don't care what kind of learner you are. And you're like, what? What kind of cruel guy is this? What is he talking about? Well, here's why I'm talking about. What we know about learning styles, whether somebody's a kinesthetic learner, a visual learner, an auditory learner, you often hear somebody say, oh, I'm a really visual learner. These learning styles are preferences, and they're not abilities. So when you say that you are a visual learner, for example, you're saying that I prefer to learn things visually. I prefer to learn things when I see them, etc. Or if somebody's a kinesthetic learner, that's a preference. They like to learn by movement, right? By moving and experiencing things. Unfortunately, in today's day and age, we often think about these learning styles as abilities. If I say, oh, I'm a visual learner, that somehow that means that you cannot listen to somebody talking and learn from them. Just because you prefer to learn things visually doesn't mean that you cannot learn things auditorily, right? You might have a preference for one or the other, but a learning style doesn't mean, oh, I'm a kinesthetic learner and so I can only learn things if I'm moving my body around. Boy, if that's the case, then you're going to have trouble with a lot of the ways that we learn things in life. You might prefer that, good for you, but that doesn't mean that you have to learn that way. And unfortunately today, people say things like, oh, I'm a visual learner. That means, oh, I can't learn things if I am just hearing them through my ears. That is not the case. Learning styles are preferences, not abilities. We need to talk about a concept called self-handicapping. Self-handicapping is so good. So self-handicapping is when people sabotage their own performance. Sabotage means to undermine it, to not like intentionally make themselves not do well. Would people actually do that? Would people actually sabotage their own performance? Well, the answer is, in certain circumstances at least, yeah. Yeah, they would. And why would they do that? They do that in order to blame the failure on a situation instead of on themselves. So You need to know that in general, people like to think good things about themselves. And let's say that you are doing something like an exam, for example, and you are kind of nervous about this exam. And so you, instead of actually studying for the exam, the night before the exam, you spend all night playing Grand Theft Auto or whatever you're going to be playing, right? You're playing, I don't know, Fortnite or whatever people are playing nowadays, instead of studying for exam and instead of getting sleep. Okay? That would be an intentional sabotaging, a self handicapping. So that when you go into the test, you're probably not going to do very well. Well, why would you do this? The reason why you would do this is because if you fail on the exam, then you can blame it on something else. You can say, "Oh, well, I didn't do well on the exam. It's not because I'm not intelligent. It's because I had to play Fortnite all night and with my roommates, and they were there and they made me play Fortnite with them, and so that's why I didn't do well on the exam." Okay. Another example, oh, I didn't do well on the exam because, it was my roommate's birthday. And so I had to go out with my roommate and we had to go and hang out the whole time. I didn't have time to study. And so it's not my fault that I didn't do well on the exam. That's self handicapping. Not a good idea, but it's logical. If the goal is to preserve your sense of self, then it's logical. Let's talk about Jones and Burgess in 1978. Okay, remember now, this is how we refer to studies. So Jones and Burgess are the last names of the authors, and they published a study in 1978. So here's what they did. In this experiment, they had participants come in, and they said, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have you take a couple of tests. This is going to be great. We're going to have you take this first test. And they gave them a test that was impossible. So all of the questions were just impossible to do. So the participants took the test. They didn't know what they were doing because they're impossible questions. They handed in. The researcher says, "Wow, you did the best that I've ever seen anyone do at this test. You did great. I'm going to bring in my supervisor because you did so great at this test." And they say, "Hey, look at the scores on this test." And the supervisor's like, "Hey, wow, that's super great. I can't wait till we see how well you do on the next test." And they're like, "Yeah, we're going to give you another test like this one, but we're testing the effects of 2 pills. And we're going to let you choose which pill you want to take. One pill will make you should enhance your performance, should make you do better. The other pill should impede your performance, should make you do worse." All right. If you were a participant in this study, you'd just taken this test, they said you did the best you've ever done. Which pill do you want to take to do the next one? Which one would you take? Well, what they found is that people tended to take the pill that would make them do worse. Why? Why would people take the time to take the pill that would make them do worse? So here's the questions you're asking. Why would people use self-handicapping to protect their ego? Well, think about this. Let's say that I was the participant in the study that we're just talking about, Jones and Burgess in 1978. And I just took this test, and you just said, "Hey, you did the best that I've ever seen. You're a genius. This is great. You're wonderful. I'm going to have my supervisors come and watch you because you're just so awesome. Which pill do you want to take?" Well, so far my ego is doing pretty good, but there's a problem. I have no idea how I did well at this. I have no idea why I performed well at this. I have no clue what the answers were. So what am I going to do for this next test? I know I'll take the pill that makes me do worse. That way, if I fail, they'll say, "Oh, well, it makes sense. You didn't do well on this one because you took the pill that made you do worse." If you took the pill that made you do better and then you fail, everyone's like, "Whoa, you were supposed to do better. We thought you were a genius, and now we know that you're not very good at this." You protect your ego by taking the pill that makes you do worse. Why? Because then you can blame it on the pill. So how is self-handicapping connected with someone's self-esteem? Hey, if I can blame it on the pill, then I can still think that I'm awesome. I can still think that I'm cool. This question, what research evidence is there that self-handicapping occurs, and be clear about the methodology and results? That's what we're talking about with Jones and Burgess, right? This Jones and Burgess test where they had people take the test that was impossible, then they gave them the pills. Which one do you choose? People tended to choose the pill that made them do worse. That is evidence, research evidence, that self-handicapping occurs. The self-handicapping was taking the pill that's going to make you do worse. Now, these questions come actually from OpenPsych, and you'll recognize them as in first chapter, the first module, in section F. These are certain questions that you will see. And these are the kinds of questions that you should be able to answer as you read through the OpenPsych texts. It will tell you, it'll help you to figure out what you're supposed to be learning from each of those sections. So this is an example for self-handicapping. I have a question for you. Have you ever sabotaged your own performance? If you said yes, then you've done self-handicapping. Now, I didn't ask you if you intentionally sabotage your own performance. In fact, most of the time, people are probably not sitting there thinking, oh, I want to protect my ego, therefore I will go and self-handicap. No, you don't do that. You just act. And you probably do this relatively subconsciously. You say, hey, in case I don't do well, here's a good excuse. The other thing, though, is that let's say that you are that person that plays Fortnite all night long with your roommate the night before the exam. You take the exam. You get your exam score back. If you do poorly, then you blame it on the Fortnite. But what if you do great? What if you get 100%? Then not only can you say that you are intelligent, you are a super genius. Because not only did you do well on the exam, you did well on the exam even though you spent all night the night before playing Fortnite instead of sleeping or studying, which you should have been doing. It helps you protect your ego. Now, unfortunately for you, if you try and do this, it turns out that when you sabotage your own performance, you actually do worse. And when you do worse, you have bad outcomes, like academic probation, that kind of stuff. So don't do this. Even though it's a very natural thing that people do, don't do it. Distractions. Psychology has taught us a lot about distractions. I don't think you've ever been distracted ever when you're trying to, let's say, listen to something online and take the questions. You don't happen to have any other screens up right now. You don't happen to have your phone out right now, do you? You might say, hey, wait, well, I can have my phone out and I can be, playing with something else, this other screen over here. Not because, I'm a bad student, but because I'm really good at multitasking. We know something from psychology. The studies in psychology have shown us that people don't multitask in a general sense. We don't actually do several things at once. So if, for example, right now, you have your phone out while you're listening to me, what you're actually doing is switching your attention from your phone to the screen, from the phone to the screen, phone to the screen. You're going back and forth. And each one of these switches is actually taking resources. You would do a lot better at understanding the content of this if you would actually just pay attention to the video. Or if you really want to just pay attention to your phone, then just pay attention to your phone. This switching, though, means that you're not actually doing very good at paying attention to either. All you're doing is switching between the two and really not concentrating on any one of them. People, when they get distracted, they have poor performance. For example, when you're texting and driving, that kind of a thing, bad. No, don't do that. You can switch between the two, but you can't do both at the same time. And we know that when you switch between the two, your performance is poor on both. Unfortunately, when you're driving, you're likely to kill someone if you are not careful. So don't do that. And when you're studying, don't try and multitask. Just study, because you will do better than if you try and switch between things. Okay, which of the following have researchers found to be the least effective study habit? Highlighting. Highlighting is the worst. A lot of times people go through, let me tell you about some things that just are not good study habits. Highlighting, that's a great one, right? So you just have your book, you're like, I'm just going to highlight the important stuff and go. You probably are not highlighting the important stuff. You're probably just highlighting whatever captures your attention at any given moment. And that doesn't actually help you to learn it in a way that you can remember and apply it to new situations. There's a big difference between learning and being able to apply to new situations and just having something grab your attention at any one given moment. There are some good things that we do in studying that researchers have found to be effective. They include things like distributed studying, meaning studying in multiple time periods instead of just cramming the night before. Now, it is true that one study session is better than none. But when you do smaller distributed studyings, you're much more likely to understand and remember concepts and be able to apply them than if you would just try and cram it all in the night before the exam. Elaborative rehearsal is something we're going to talk about a little bit more later on, but generally what it is taking a concept that's new and connecting it with concepts that you already know, then you can remember. That you're elaborating on a specific thing, right? And rehearsal tends to be we repeat it. So for example, if you have already memorized all of, let me think of something, you've memorized all the dances on Fortnite, right? Then if you need to study, you take each of the 4 theoretical perspectives and you attach it to one of the different dances on Fortnite, and you make sure that you have a good way cognitively to connect learning theory with this specific dance in Fortnite, right? And if you can do that, then you're more likely to be able to recall it when you need it on an exam, for example. Practice testing means not just going through and rereading stuff, but instead actually testing yourself. So, for example, going through the learning outcomes, the learning objectives on PSYC and saying, you know, what is the research evidence that we have of self-handicapping? Testing yourself on it, and then actually going through that test and answering it. We have found, in fact, researchers have found that practice testing is more effective than just rereading or restudying. Now, it is true that sometimes people feel more competent or more confident in their ability to perform well on an exam if they've studied and then studied more. But when people actually practice test, they tend to do better. Even though they might feel a little less confident going into the exam, the practice tends to be better than just the studying. Now, I want you to warn you, when we're talking about practice testing, some people love to make flashcards. And so what they'll do is they'll write the thing. So the concept is self-handicapping. And then on the back, they'll write, you know, intentionally sabotaging your own performance so that you can protect your ego on the back, okay? And then they'll go through their flashcards. There's good ways and bad ways to use flashcards. Here's the bad way, and I think unfortunately too many people do it. They say, okay, self-handicapping. Oh, that's when you like handicap yourself by intentionally sabotaging yourself, and you know, so that you can protect your ego. Yeah, I remember that. It's not an effective way to practice test. Not an effective way to do it. If you can instead take like a concept of self-handicapping and then other things, if you're going to make flashcards, then maybe I've got like growth mindset on this flashcard and self-handicapping on this flashcard. Put them next to each other and say, how are these the same? How are they different from each other? And how do I know? Give an example. That's an effective way to do that. But just trying to remember and then cheating and flipping, probably not a very good way for studying for anything. Okay, everybody. Thanks.